Well, hey there, Lang and Comp friends. How nice of you to drop by for another episode of Random Things in Mr. Coon's Classroom while no one is here and it's just me and I'm talking to myself and it's weird when the janitors come in. But anyways, if you were here normally, I'd probably cover this in class and I would hopefully try to make it interactive. But since you're not here, I'm going to try this out. So, if you absolutely hate this and you feel like it's a terrible way to learn, please let me know when you come back to school and I'll try to figure something else out. But I'm basically trying to figure out how to cover, 3 days of content that I normally would have covered when you're not here. So I'm talking to myself. It's really fun. Anywho, I was going to make you a video on speaker, but I decided to just go straight into classical appeals because that does cover speaker as well. One of the most important elements when we're doing rhetorical analysis is who is speaking. So this is going to be kind of a segue into that, but it's also going to cover some stuff that you definitely need to know for the AP Lang and Comp exam. So without further ado then, classical appeals, logos, ethos, and pathos, or if you want to call it logos, ethos, and pathos. Those of you who went to charter, you can probably correct me on that because I know you all took Latin. But for our intents and purposes, I'm just going to say logos, ethos, and pathos. And Porthos, because it's like the Three Musketeers, except it's not. So, anywho, these are called the classical appeals. Aristotle's the guy who came up with them. So if you hear me call them the Aristotelian appeals, that's what I'm talking about. Aristotle, Aristotelian. So if you take a look at this piece of art here, this is Raphael's School of Athens. It's painted in the Renaissance, but he's depicting something from classical antiquity. So like over 1,000 years before he painted this, that's when these guys lived. We're talking like ancient, way back. So Plato is going to be the guy on the left over here, and Aristotle is this guy on the right. So you can see he's like they're supposedly in this painting they're in an argument, and Plato is like pointing up to heaven, and he's like, so you can see his finger there, and he's like, hey man, everything that's important is up there in the world of forms, up there in heaven. It's not even tangible. You can't touch it. And Aristotle's like, no, dude, you don't even know what you're talking about. So you look at the look on his face there. That's like nah, you got no idea. And he's pointing, well, he's not pointing. He's going like, no, here on earth, this is what we're worried about. And he's worried about people too. Plato's kind of like living in his brain up here. That's why he looks like Dumbledore. And Aristotle's like, no way, man. What we need to worry about is this. So Aristotle came up with this theory. He's like, everything is rhetoric, essentially. That's where I got that idea too. That's why I presented that to you, right? When I told you you're trying to argue in everything that you're doing, you're trying to get people when you're communicating to do, think, or feel something. And that's the business of rhetoric. So he was obsessed with this. He's also a philosopher. So like any good philosopher, he's like, let's boil this all down into something that can be compartmentalized and understood. So this is what he said. He said in the Aristotelian framework, he's like, every appeal or attempt to persuade can be categorized into 3 modes of persuasion: logos, ethos, and pathos. So let's look at those individually. So this first one, logos, or the text, is an appeal to logic or reason. So it's the way your text is actually structured. It's evidence-based. And this is rational. This is like pure rationality. This is the thing that you're going to be using when you're explaining the connections between your claims and your evidence. You're using this, and it has to be solid. Otherwise, you're kind of losing an argument there. Hard numbers, hard data. That's the kind of stuff that Logos is concerned with. And it also looks at the quality of reasons, and the quality of the evidence is also important there. So if I say, like, according to stupidfacts.com, 33% of people, blah, 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 it doesn't matter what I put after that. You just quoted stupidfacts.com. So, like, the quality of your evidence is just, like, absolutely garbage. And, kind of like for a little bit of an anecdotal story, I had to sit through, as the senior project coordinator, I did, all the seniors who failed the senior project, like the final presentation. So, I hadn't seen this kid's presentation yet, and he comes into my classroom and delivers his whole presentation after he failed. And, you're supposed to ask questions at the end of these things. So the first question I had for him, raise my hand, calls me, and I go, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like you built your entire senior paper off of an article that you found on BuzzFeed. And he's like, yeah, you're not wrong. And I just didn't even know what to say, because that's something like his English teacher should have caught. And the very like that kid never should have even been there. He should have failed his English paper, his senior paper, before he even got to the presentation, because the quality of his evidence, he had no argument. There's nothing you can do. I mean, you're using like essentially something that's a little bit better than a blog. Yeah. So a better piece of evidence would be something like, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, and then you have numbers and data and facts and things like that. Although, at this point, some people would even question these governmental agencies like, the FDA and the WHO at this point, World Health Organization, and the Food and Drug Administration. There are people out there for sure that now are like, they don't even know what they're talking about. I digress. So internal logic and structure of the argument this is also part of it. This is what I mentioned. When you're explaining the connection between your evidence and your claims, the structure of your argument is important, right? You need to make sure that those logic chains, those things that follow, this follows, then this follows, those things are solid, and you don't have any fallacies in there, and you're not just playing fast and loose with numbers and things like that. So that's logos. Now we're moving on to ethos. RESPECT. This is all about the appeal to the character of the speaker or the writer. And you'll see politicians do this all the time, especially the president. If he says like, as the president of the United States, I blah, 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 he's invoking the office. He's like, hey, I am the president. Remember that. You should listen to me because I'm the president. It's basically, this argument is essentially like, hey, you should listen to me. Why? Because I am who I am and I know what I'm talking about. I am special in some way. If you're in an argument with somebody about how to use semicolons or something like that, and you're just like, yeah, well, this random balding middle-aged guy once told me that blah, 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 blah. This is how you use semicolons. Your friend's going to be like, what does that guy know? But if you say, you know what, my AP Lang and comp teacher told me this. Well, then, like, you have, like, basically utilized or leveraged my individuality. I want to say, like, who I am as an expert. I'm like an expert witness, basically. So you're using ethos to try to convince that person. You're like, hey, look, this guy knows what he's talking about, and he said this. So, believe me when I'm quoting him. The president is a good example too, because like the president will, if the president's delivering a speech, he might not call on his office. He might not start every speech with, as the president of the United States. He might start something like, my fellow Americans, right? And now the president's not invoking this office that's like, believe me because of this. He might be, saying like, believe me because I'm one of you, essentially. So it's like a different way to use ethos. Here are some examples here. Essentially, again, like I said, ethos, we're dealing with the trustworthiness and credibility of the speaker. So the speaker's knowledgeable about the issue. That's also building ethos. If you're the way you articulate yourself builds ethos. If I was to start talking like this and I maybe just hung out, you might judge my abilities to think just because of simply the way I'm talking and articulating myself. In fact, you might judge me and believe that I'm not as smart as you just because of the way I'm talking. That's also ethos, right? Everything about that character, anything where you're like kind of thinking, should I believe this person or not? And these are value judgments that we make all the time. And in text, if it's just simply text and you're, doing a rhetorical analysis, even like diction and tone and things like that also get into this. This person might be attempting to convey the idea that they're educated. You see this all the time with I don't know, I do anyways, when I'm at parent-teacher conferences, and if I get like a hostile parent, they know that I'm a teacher. And so they might sit down and they'll try to use like exotic vocabulary words and things like that to make me, I don't know what they're doing, trying to make me think that they're like super educated or something. I have no idea. Sometimes I'm just like, well, this is awkward. Why can't we just talk like normal people? But yeah, like it does happen. And that's kind of like an ethos appeal. And maybe they're even doing it subconsciously. I don't know. This happens all the time in advertising. They'll hire somebody to sell their product who appears to be knowledgeable. So like Dale Earnhardt, he's a 3-time NASCAR champion. If he tells you like use this brand of oil in your car, you might do it just because of who he is, right? This happens like all the time, like an appeal to it's kind of like appeal to false authority, where you get like maybe like a basketball star will be telling you things about politics. That doesn't make any sense at all, but people still believe it. Like it's, I mean, you get endorsements by like I don't know, like LeBron James or something like that, and like the man knows about basketball. He is an amazing basketball player. He's probably not like the greatest person to take advice from in like maybe like a geopolitical crisis or something like that. Like, well, LeBron James said we should go to war with Syria, so we should probably go to war with Syria. Probably not the best plan, but at the same time, like people do that. If you're it's like kind of how movie stars and stuff like that. That's, you get an endorsement from one of them if you're running for political office. It can do a lot for you. And if you are a movie star and you run for office, oh my goodness, that's how like the super strong guy. I'll be back. Arnold Schwarzenegger. That guy ran and won. He was the governor of California. The governor of California. I mean, the man's like, he's just a kind of meatheady, muscle bound guy. Like, well, I mean, I guess, I don't know much about him, but it was like, that's kind of a strange thing. I mean, Donald Trump's probably another example. He was like a reality TV star, then he ran for office, but because he was known, he has that cachet. And there's that I guess like the ethos for him is like he had a show, right? What was that? The Apprentice, and he's like firing people, and it looks like he knows how to run all these businesses, and that's part of the narrative that show presented. And then he's able to use that to cash in and run for president. People are like, he's going to fix everything financially for the country, and that's like a really interesting way that he was able to leverage ethos to get the White House. So essentially, this argument boils down to this: believe me because of who I am. So here's some more stuff on that too. Kind of like questions to ask yourself. So does the audience respect you? There's like this like idea of like a teacher who wears a tie instead of jeans. Like that teacher might be trying to say something about who they are, right? We already talked about my clothes. I let you guys, diss me for a while or whatever. I think it was, I don't know if it was 3rd period or 7th period, but somebody told me that I look like a basic white girl with that sweater I was wearing yesterday. You guys are mean. But anyways, like if I wear a tie, I might be trying to say something about like who I am. Like, please respect me. I am a respectable person. You should believe me because I'm a respectable person. And if I wear jeans, that's also maybe I'm like trying to be cool. So I'm like, no, you should believe me because I'm cool. You should do your work because I'm cool. A student who punctuates his essays or her essays and prints neatly on clean paper, you're actually saying something about like the argument that you're making and the quality of your work when you do that. I mean, I talk to my seniors about this when they're doing their resumes. If you print your resume on paper that is like slightly heavier than normal paper, like you go get yourself some like 30-pound stock. Hold on, the lights just turned off in my room because I'm literally alone in here and it's almost 5 o'clock. There we go. We're back. You print yourself your resume on some slightly heavier paper. It actually like you're making that the person who's interviewing you, when you hand them that paper, they'll tend to like kind of feel it, and it's like saying something. It's like this piece of ethos. You're like, I am an important person, and this is an important document. Why? Because it's like you put like a suit and tie on your writing there. So the audience, you might also say something or do something that makes the audience believe that you're a person of good character. So like I might, if I get pulled over by the police, I might be like, oh, let me get my driver's license here. Oh no, my teaching badge is what I grabbed instead. Did I mention that I'm a teacher? And that might get me off, right? Because that might get me off the hook. The police officer might be like, oh, you're a teacher? My gosh, I'm so sorry. It must be so hard. Have a nice day, because like teachers don't break the law. Teachers don't steal either. Most of them. And then the audience might believe, like, are you generally trustworthy? Are you a person of good character? So like if you play up the fact that you're a pastor, that you're honest, you're like a fireman, or maybe I put cop on here, but maybe that's not true anymore because people are like A lot of people out there are like really hating on the cops these days. And that might be, context. Context is very important in this stuff too. We haven't talked about that yet in here, but I know, actually, Georgia May, I think you brought that up. Context. You're like, we need context or we don't know. That is totally true too. So like, if you're doing ethos and maybe you're in like North Idaho or something like that, you could pull the cop card and people would be like, yes, officer, we love you, thank you. And if you did that in Portland and you're in the chop zone or Chaz or whatever they called it or whatever, you're in big trouble, right? Like that's not a good no one's going to believe you. In fact, if you're like, hey everyone, as a police officer of the 4th precinct, it doesn't matter what you say after that. You have so destroyed your credibility with the crowd in the Seattle occupied autonomous zone or whatever, that no matter what you say, they're probably just going to go, boo, boo. You can see this with Mayor Wheeler. He went down to the chop zone and he tried to talk to people down there and he literally got like booed and shamed until he left because he is an authority figure associated with the government. So be aware of that. Audience is very important. Context is very important. And, we'll get to that stuff later. I'm just covering appeals now. So does the audience believe that you are an authority on this speech topic? So, like I said, you come into my classroom, I have built in my classroom a kind of a shrine almost to my ethos. So like my name's on the door, I've got my, behind me up here, I've got my degrees up there, I've got my plaque that I'm a member of the Sigma Tau Delta English Honor Society, I've got my recognition of excellence from the college board. I got all kinds of stuff up here. And, hopefully when you come in, then you're like, just kind of, oh, like this guy actually maybe knows what he's talking about. But all that stuff I told you about semicolons, I made all that up. I just thought it'd be funny to teach you how to punctuate incorrectly. I'm kidding. It's all right. Actually, I didn't teach you anything about semicolons yet, but you have supposedly, I guess, drunk the Kool-Aid, as it were, because I am, training you to do things for the AP Lang and Comp exam. And if you buy what I'm saying, you've also bought my ethos appeal, right? You're like, yeah, no, like this guy, he seems pretty legit. And that's because I've ethosed you into that. So here's a couple images. I'm probably going to post something like this for your discussion as well, but I'll let you take a look at this. And the question I have for you is, what sort of ethos appeal is President Obama making here? So take a look at how he's dressed, the context of this, objects associated with him, even the location, right? Because presidents get to choose this stuff. Let's say there's like some kind of bombing or something like that. The president gets to choose where the press conference is held. There's all kinds of rooms in the White House, and he gets to pick, or she gets to pick, whatever location and things like that. They also have people who have like PhDs in rhetoric who work for them and write their speeches and things like that. And they can say, like, I think we should do this, so we should put this here and do that. So there's that. Facial expression, all this stuff. What do you see here? What seems to be the ethos appeal in this photo? And then same question here. So what do you notice about the context, objects, things like that, the way the president's dressed, or former president? All of this stuff, right? I mean, and even like this stuff in the background here, you compare that to this. Both of these photos are from speeches that were absolutely calculated by people who have, PhDs in public relations, which is essentially rhetoric. A public relations consultant, their job is to build your ethos. That is it. That is what they do. So you compare those two things. And I'll post these on the separate page for discussion, and that's what your discussion topic is going to be. So I'll let you kind of muse on those things in that deal. Okay, so pathos. This is the most fun. This is the most fun of all of the appeals. This is the one that advertising is basically built on this one. Mostly, right? Like advertising does cover the other two, but like this is the main deal right here. You ever heard somebody, you called them like pathetic? You're pathetic. It's the same It's the same root word there. So you're appealing to sympathies, values, beliefs, and emotions of the audience. Pathos is always going to be very audience specific. Ethos is still audience specific, right? We talked about cops in the Chaz zone and the chop zone. But like there are certain things that like kind of transcend. Like if you're I don't know, like you're a brave person, or you're maybe like a doctor, something like that. That pretty much like transcends as ethos. If you're a doctor, most people, unless they like some of those like anti-vaccinator people who like, you know, live out in the woods and they're like, no, doctors, I don't believe you. But like most of the time, doctors, we all believe them. We all trust them for medical advice. We don't even question them. Pathos, though, is absolutely audience specific, and you have to be aware of the audience. So whatever you're talking about when you're analyzing and you're talking about pathos and stuff like that, those values, you have to talk about how those values and beliefs and emotions that the speaker was calling on, how they affected the audience, right? So God, the Bible, freedom, apple pie, mama, all that stuff can, you know, whatever. Like those are things that you could invoke in order to convince somebody to do, think, or feel something. Evocative, detailed imagery is also part of this. Personal stories, things like that. Pictures of starving children. That's the example I have up here. When I made this little presentation thing a few years ago, I had actually just gotten this as an email. Oh, well, it's coming up in a second here. I should talk about connotations too. If you don't know the difference between connotation and denotation, we'll probably cover that in class because it is one of the terms that you for sure need to be aware of. But essentially, denotation is literally what the word means, and then connotation is all the associations that go along with that thing. So, like, here's the example I have: prostituting our American values. If you heard somebody say that in a speech, and let's say it's like a conservative person or something like that, maybe they'd even say it in like the context of like a political meeting that happened at a conservative church, right? And they go, these people are prostituting our American values. Well, you know, the people in that, like everyone in that room, like the word prostituting is like you're literally prostituting means you're like selling for money, usually sexual favors. But like the connotations here is like sin and evil and darkness and badness and, you know, the kind of things that we don't want near our children. And when this person said prostituting, they'd probably spit a little bit, and then the whole congregation would go, everyone in that building would go, oh, and like kind of take a step back because it's just like, it's like slapped them. I know at one point, you can find this on YouTube too. I should maybe post it. There was I think it was a 2016 presidential debate, and Donald Trump, who is a master of rhetoric. I don't care which political side you lean on. That man knows how to work a crowd with pathos. So he, this was like I think it was a abortion rights or women's rights, however you want to call it, like a debate. And this, you know, the other person's talking, and then Donald Trump gets his mouth really close to the microphone. You can find this on YouTube if you want. And he goes, "They're ripping babies from the womb." And it's like when you have that image, like, I mean, obviously, like this connotation denotation thing, that's what it boils down to. Because like if you are pro-choice, if you're pro-choice, it's couched as like the idea of an abortion is couched as like women's rights, which I think most people will be in favor of women's rights. So it's a way to change the rhetoric in that direction. And then it's also couched as like the thing that's being aborted is couched as like a blob of tissue. Whereas on the right, if you're pro-life, no one's going to be pro-death, right? So in that case too, you've got that connotative language, and then the right's going to call it a baby, right? Because like no one's going to be like no. I mean, it's like so basically they're arguing about apples and oranges. Like the left is not over there with signs like kill all the babies, because that's ridiculous, right? But that's what the right's saying. The right's like they're killing the babies, and then the left's not saying like, well, I guess like the right's not over there like women shouldn't have any choices, put women back into bondage and slavery. No, but that's what the left is. The left is trying to like put that on them. So it's really like when you're looking at the for sure that's a good example, like the rights of women or abortion rights, however you want to call that, that debate is like very much a debate of pathos rhetoric, for sure. So if you want to find some examples of this, go after that. Okay, here's that picture I was talking about. Pictures of starving children. Here's what I got in my email inbox. This. Don't let her fall behind from hunger. What a cute child. I mean, look, like, do I want to see her starve to death? And and you got to consider audience too, right? This was sent to a teacher. It says, give hungry kids the food they need to succeed this school year. Donate now. Right there. And it's just like, wham, right? There's this little child staring at me, and then here's the letter I got. Dear Thomas, it's September, and that means two things. First, schools all across the country are opening their doors again after summer break. Second, more hungry kids are going to need a healthy breakfast to start their day off right. Excuse me. Believe it or not, in America today, one of the world's wealthiest nations, 3 out of 4 public school teenagers or teachers say that students regularly come to school hungry, right? In fact, 81% of teachers say it happens at least once a week. That's why I urge you to contribute 20, 40, 60 or more today to help No Kid Hungry connect more school children to healthy food. Right, so now this is moved from a pathos argument to, this is more logos, right, or logos. We've got like actual stats and data in here and stuff like that, and it's moving along. I don't know anything about the organization, so like the ethos isn't there. But like this is what I got in like just large, bold, and it's like, well, bam! It's like, don't let her fall behind from hunger. And it's like, you want her to fall behind from hunger? You are a horrible person. Like and it's sent to me, so like it's playing off of the idea that I care about children, which I do. So like they know their audience. They know that teachers, no one stays in this profession if you don't care about young people. I mean, if you just only care about your subject area, the students will eat you alive if they know you don't like care about them. And I do care about you. And if you were hungry, I would absolutely get you food. I've done it before. I'll do it again. But yeah, this was just like, I was like, oh my gosh, look at this. Pathos. It's like pictures of starving children. There's an entity, is it Save the Children? I forget. There's one that like shows children, and their kind of classic ad is like there's children picking through a trash heap in some kind of like Central American nation. Same thing. It's pathos. It's like just pathos all the way. And it works, and it's not wrong, and you should know how to use it, and you should also know how to recognize it. So that kind of stuff. When you're talking gun control debates too that take place after immediately after like school shootings, oh my gosh, that just is like total pathos. There it is again. Okay, so bonus cool stuff. That's pretty much it. Those are the 3 Aristotelian appeals. We're going to practice looking at those in class when you come back. I'll show you some advertisements, and we'll talk about what they have and what appeal strategies they're using. So bonus cool stuff. Yes, there is totally overlap with these 3 modes of persuasion. So don't think that it's just one or it's just the other. You definitely can recognize all of them. I mean, even numbers. You might be spinning numbers in a pathos sort of way. But just know that there's probably going to be one that is more dominant than the others. And that's probably the one you're going to want to focus on as the rhetorical strategy that was specifically used to convince the audience to do, think, or feel X. You can say like this was the dominant mode of persuasion. So kind of be aware of that. Don't discount the others. That's not to say they're mutually exclusive. So like if there's a pathos argument, as in like that little girl thing that we watched, it doesn't mean that there wasn't any logos in there. There totally was. Like they had numbers and stats and data to back up the thing that they were doing. But the dominant appeal strategy was something else. So, and here's a pro tip too. This is like when you're, doing rhetorical analysis, you've got that essay you're writing for the AP Lang and Comp exam, and for me, and for life, and for college. If you like saying this, the author uses pathos to blah, 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 blah. That means nothing. Cause like if they're saying rhetorical analysis, that's like, tell me what kind of sandwich that teacher had. And you're like, you're just like, that teacher had a sandwich. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So like, if you're saying pathos, that's really not specific. It's way too general. It's way too broad. It's like it doesn't do anything. So like better to say something like this. And this is facetious and it's totally specific and it's totally weird, but like you see where I'm going, right? The author showed the teacher a picture of a cute, hungry kid to heap piles of guilt on said teacher in order to motivate the teacher to donate, and then blah, blah, blah. You could keep going, but whatever. Like that's the idea. You have the author. I would want to be more specific there, but I'm just telling you. Showed the teacher, there's the audience, a picture of a cute, hungry kid to heap, and then here's the effect of that pathos thing, right? So this is what they did specifically, a picture of a cute, hungry kid, and then here's how it pathosed that teacher. Whoops. To heap piles of guilt. It says piles on guilt. I just typed this. Oh, sad. Piles of guilt on said teacher in order to motivate the teacher to donate. And so there's like what that pathos thing was designed to do. So, and I just typed this out because in the past, this is what I did. Drawing time with Mr. Coons, but I can't because, yeah, you're not here. I'm alone in my classroom. So I typed this instead, but yeah, you get the idea. All right, well, that's pretty much it. So if you have questions, shoot me an email. And remember, we're going to be looking at these two pictures, and that's what your discussion is going to be about. So cheers to you. I hope that you have a wonderful 5 days of not seeing me. Yeah. I'm sorry I'm posting this late. It's like 5 o'clock now, and it's been taking me a lot longer to record these things and get them edited than I thought it would. Maybe I'll get faster. Anyways, peace out. You guys are great.